nearly 10 years since my burnout experience, and I believe that it wasn't necessary for me to burn out, and it's not necessary for you either. In this podcast, my guests and I share our real-life experiences with burnout. We get into the science of stress and share actionable tips on how to prevent burnout and how to recover from it. I'm Hannah Holden, ex-management consultant and burnout survivor. I work with management consultants to help them avoid and overcome burnout. I help them to get intentional about their choices, rebuild their energy, and embed new healthy habits so that they can get back to loving life. Hello and welcome back. Today I am very excited to be joined by Sheila Kenneally. Sheila is an accredited naturopath and she specialises in energy, metabolism and hormones. And the clients who come to her are coming to her for nervous system imbalances like anxiety, depression, insomnia, and also issues with weight loss and chronic fatigue, and often there are hormone imbalances involved in all of these. So today we wanted to talk a little about the role that stress plays in conditions like these and what we can do about them and how Sheila works with her clients. So welcome, Sheila. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, hi Hannah. Thank you for having me.
Right, so I've spoken to you before and you are so passionate about what you do and so knowledgeable about what you do and how the body operates. I'm interested in understanding how you came to do what you do. What's your personal journey that brought you to where you are now?
Sure. Well, I'll begin by revealing my passport. I'm of American citizenship. So I was raised on a standard American diet, despite my mom's best efforts. I was also raised on antibiotics, Roaccutane, various antidepressants and anxiolytics in America. This was just sort of the status quo. So despite having many, wonderful health things in my childhood, I was raised in pretty much a standard American diet when it came to food and medicaments. So around age 18, I began to clue into health and practice Bikram yoga very regularly and begin to delve into nutrition. It was as much for myself as I would later understand it's for clients. I went on to study science at a university in Chicago called Loyola, and then went on to study naturopathy in New Zealand for 5 years at a college there. So what began as a personal crusade for my own health and recuperation of some of these holes that were placed in me in childhood later snowballed into obviously a professional career where I could lean into a lot of these experiences and then offer guidance to clients. So I guess in a nutshell, the childhood that I described above, plus what we call ACE events, adverse childhood events, aka trauma, just led me down the rabbit hole of stress in terms of how I experience it and how I can manage a brain that was exposed to a lot of early childhood stress. This is a large part of my practice. I work with people that have had chronic stress, and then there's many subsequent conditions in the body that arise from that. So this is a bit of a passion of mine that comes into a lot of my practice.
I found the thing that stood out in what you were just saying there was when you referred to being raised on antibiotics and then being prescribed antidepressants in your teens as a status quo. I find that quite concerning. But I guess, you're probably right. There are probably far more people who've experienced that than I might realise. So before we dig into root causes and solutions for the symptoms that your clients come to, could you describe some of the typical symptoms that clients are coming to you with? So what are they showing up for?
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to attract men and women 35 years and older that are in some degree of burnout within their nervous system, which is manifesting as anxiety, depression, insomnia, a constant racing feeling. We say tired and wired. So at nighttime, they're actually tired, but their cortisol pattern is so wonky that they can't actually put themselves to sleep. So I tend to see people that are about mid-mountain. They're not at the bottom of the mountain where there's very little chance of reversing symptoms. They're not necessarily at the top where they're just getting these little small signs of stress. They're about mid-mountain. They're cognizant that their body composition isn't the same, their digestion isn't the same, their level of energy is not the same, and they need to do something about it, and I offer a lot of awareness on my social media channels around menopause, perimenopause, and andropause for men. And so there's this educative piece around I have to sort out my nervous system before I move into these years of hormonal changes. So that's more or less a client avatar that I attract, but I did refer to the mountain. And so I want to say that I also really, really enjoy working with people that are a bit further down the mountain into autoimmunity or mold illness, or different stealth pathogens like EBV or Lyme disease. These are people that are a little bit further down, and so it takes a bit more time and effort to reverse some of their symptomology. But there is absolutely the possibility for them to feel better as well. So those tend to be the client avatars that I attract.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting that you connect. So EBV, Epstein-Barr virus, is that right? Epstein-Barr?
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting that you link that and Lyme's disease to a similar scale. Are they also affected by levels of stress and extent of burnout? Are they connected?
I mean, in a nutshell, I think so many roads lead back to cortisol. Like EBV is a virus and Lyme is a collection of pathogens and is living in sympathetic dominance or hyperproduction of cortisol going to impede your immune system's capacity to deal with these pathogens?
Right.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I wouldn't say that having elevated cortisol is going to give you Lyme disease by any means, but elevated cortisol does decrease your immune function. So is it going to leave you more open to contracting mold or different pathogens? Yes, absolutely. There's connections. And this is the holistic aspect of being a naturopath is, making these connections and helping people to understand how their systems overlap and that nothing exists in a silo.
That makes sense. Yeah. So it's you once, when we spoke, referred to your history as like the perfect storm. For the symptoms that then showed up for you. And I guess it's how do we create an environment within our body that is either leaning towards health or towards issues, whatever those issues might be, then how it shows up for an individual.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. On that note, Hannah, you may have come across the terrain versus the germ theory, and this circulated a lot with what we faced as a world these past few years. But the terrain theory is largely that if you create a healthy terrain, that you're going to be less susceptible to germs, settling in your environment. So yes, absolutely. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. Okay, so if we take one of your clients as an example, so let's take somebody who's on that mountain experiencing levels of stress. Can you explain how the stress that they're experiencing then contributes to those health issues, those symptoms that are showing up?
Sure, absolutely. So because I focus on the line between nutrition and endocrinology being our hormone-producing glands, I like to empower people to understand how stress affects their thyroid, their adrenal glands, and their ovaries or the testicles. So stress is going to affect your thyroid, which is the gland that's responsible for metabolism, your metabolic rate, the rate at which you burn calories, by down-regulating the conversion of T4 to T3. Essentially, this means that the higher levels of cortisol you have, the lower the metabolic rate you're going to have. So this is quite important for a lot of 35, 40-year-olds that are struggling with body composition, that are, their bodies are changing, perimenopause, and suddenly they feel like their metabolism is broke. So that's quite relevant. And then stress is going to affect your sex hormone production greatly. So I think we talked about this before, but the building block of cortisol is cholesterol. The building block of your sex hormones, which are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, is also cholesterol. And so if you're stressed, your body is going to prioritize keeping you alive and produce cortisol versus producing those sex hormones. Like imagine when we were living in the caves. If you were extremely stressed, was your body going to prioritize keeping you alive or producing a baby? So this is really relevant for women with infertility, for men with performance and virility issues, for women with estrogen dominance. Like, this is really, really rampant now that stress is creating a lot of disharmony in our hormonal system. So yeah, those are just a few examples of how cortisol, a hormone that we absolutely need, I don't want to demonize it entirely, because we need it to wake up in the morning. We have what's called a cortisol awakening response. We need it in healthy amounts, but too much or too little of it, we feel it's to our detriment.
I hadn't made that connection before, that you spelt out so clearly that the higher your cortisol levels, the lower your metabolic rate. I think that's really blunt. It's really, really clear. And I think you've mentioned before about how that shows up. So obviously it shows up with body composition, but that people gain fat in specific areas of the body when it's caused by by cortisol. Is that right? That it's kind of around the tummy that they would be gaining their weight?
That's a symptom of hypothyroidism. So just to break this down a little bit to get clear, because I have a science hat and then I have a clinical hat. And I just want to explain, like, elevated cortisol downregulates the conversion of T4 to T3. T3 is our active thyroid hormone that we need to have a healthy metabolic rate, to be burning calories. When we have downregulated T3, it's known as hypothyroidism, yes? And when we have hypothyroidism, yes, we're going to gain weight around our abdomen. We're going to be constipated, potentially depressed, with brittle nails and hair loss, potentially. So this is very common. There's a lot of diagnosed hypothyroidism, as well as what I call subclinical hypothyroidism, where the test, anyways, that's a whole nother podcast, but yes, just to let you know, cortisol obviously is going to affect body composition, fat distribution, and various other things.
Okay, that's really clear, thank you. Okay, so let's say that somebody's showing up with some of those issues that you were just describing, the weight gain, the tired but wired, etc. How might you look to treat them? What aspects of their life would you be looking at?
Sure. So clients that come to see me, they fill out a very extensive health questionnaire. And this allows me to understand how the different 5 types of stress, as well as adverse childhood events, are playing out in their life. So I go into a lot of this on my blog, but just quickly, the 5 types of stress being digestive stress, inflammatory stress, glycemic stress, circadian, and perceived. I'm looking at each of these to understand to what extent this is affecting their nervous system and then subsequent systems. Following this analysis and this sleuth-like state that I'm in, where I'm really exploring them as a detective and there's a lot of dialogue between us, I put together a treatment plan that will include functional testing. They may need to do hormonal, cortisol, digestive testing, and then dietary, lifestyle, and supplementation modifications that we embark upon for about 6 weeks, because I like to see client results within 6 weeks to keep them on board, and then we develop from there.
I think it's worth, without going off down a rabbit hole, it's worth us just dipping into each of those different types of stress, and the fact that the body, they're very different, these 5 different types of stress, and yet the body's response in all cases is to produce cortisol, if I understand rightly. So we've got perceived stress being the type of stress that I mostly talk about, which is how we react to our environment, what's going on around us, and how we respond to that. So the worry of our job stability, we've got late emails, pleasing clients, all that kind of stuff is perceived stress. And then you described inflammatory stress. And so what was that?
This is if someone has inflammation in their body, and inflammation can obviously come from an injury. It can come from digestive distress. It can come from digestive intolerances. So living with a chronically elevated level of inflammation is going to also drive stress. So
that might show up as we're going to come on to digestive stress as well. So digestive stress. What causes digestive stress?
Digestive distress is caused by dysbiosis, which is imbalanced microflora, which is often caused by dietary intolerances. So people eating things that they just simply don't have the enzymes or the hydrochloric acid for. So, and a lot of that is caused by stress, elevated cortisol down regulates our hydrochloric acid. So yeah, this is where it's really important for people to understand, like, what came first, how stress impacts digestion. So yes, people are walking around with symptoms such as bloating, gas, constipation, and diarrhea, and underneath that there's very certain conditions going on within their gut that I try to address in seances.
Really interesting. I'm thinking back to when I experienced burnout. One of the symptoms that showed up for me was acne. I was kind of fumbling around in the dark trying to figure out what was the root cause, what was going on. But one of the things I did was take dairy and gluten out of my diet, and my acne cleared up. And I also resigned from my job around the same time, so I guess I was experiencing less stress. So it's just interesting to kind of piece the jigsaw together. I certainly didn't do it with much awareness at the time. I was just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying to see what stuck. And the last one was circadian stress. So I think it's worth touching on what that is and what,
Yeah, sure. Well, there was circadian and glycemic. So just quickly, circadian stress is like, it's touching upon our circadian rhythm, which is the internal clock in our brain that's set by light. So do you begin your day with bright light? Do you finish your day with the UVA light from the sunset? Or are you exposed to blue light, to junk light all day long, which actually creates a stress? So light, our cells, actually I put a post up about this yesterday, 1/3 of the electrons that your body needs to produce energy comes from food. The other 2/3 comes from light. Our cells actually eat light, much in the same way our digestive system eats food. And then that triggers a lot of biological processes. So we are very, very, very shaped and influenced by light on a health level. So circadian stress touches upon that. What is the quality of natural light in your life? And then quickly, glycemic stress touches upon your blood sugar regulation. How regulated are your blood sugar levels?
Okay, great. And so when you're understanding your new client, you're looking at all of those 5 different types of stress to get the full picture of what's causing the elevated cortisol levels and therefore causing the symptoms that we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Along with many other things, but I definitely look at nervous system input. Yes.
And so, how quickly, and are there some symptoms that have gone too far that are not really reversible? And if somebody, you mentioned that sometimes that you aim to get some results for clients within 6 weeks. So I'm interested in understanding how quickly you can reverse some of those symptoms, and if there are symptoms there that perhaps indicate that it's gone too far.
I haven't worked with many clients where it's way too far and we don't get some sort of symptom relief. But yeah, like I said, I like for clients to start feeling better within 3 to 4 weeks, which is often achievable if we address digestive distress, lifestyle, sleep, nutrition, hydration, bowel movements, all of it. And most conditions are reversible or manageable. In cases of autoimmunity, like endometriosis, which is deemed autoimmune now. I mean, now I speak French also. So yes, most clients are going to feel relief within 3 to 4 weeks. There are certain conditions that are more managed than reversed, but it's never too late. It's never too late to really get in there and try to apply a very sound foundation to your health.
So that's fascinating. So endometriosis is actually an autoimmune condition. Is that right? Is that what you said?
There's a lot of emerging research, right, treating it as an autoimmune condition now. So with clients, it tends to be how I approach it to manage it in the ways that I look at, like autoimmune thyroiditis of the thyroid gland as well. There's autoimmunity of the thyroid gland. So yeah, there's a certain protocol for autoimmunity that I also apply to endometriosis.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So when I was looking at your website, there was something that you said on there that I really, really wholeheartedly agree with, which is that the body sends out early warning signs, early signals. And I've spoken about this on one of the podcasts before, where I was talking about the symptoms that were showing up for me about 4 years before I actually experienced burnout. But no doubt my personal experiences weren't reflective of everybody. So what are the sorts of things that people could be looking out for that might be the early symptoms to catch burnout in the bud?
Yeah, I mean, early symptoms, I think it's really important to highlight that we all have different levels of resilience in our nervous system that is created by early childhood experiences. This is where a passion of mine lies. So, what you've lived up until this point is going to impact your degree of resilience to stress. And if you know you have lived a life with quite a bit of stress and trauma, then your resilience is going to be lower. And this is biologically, this is your HPA axis in your brain and the production of cortisol at the adrenal glands. So having knowledge of this and the degree to which you're in touch with your body as well, because some people walk around with symptoms, with digestive symptoms their whole life that they think is no issue. They have chronic diarrhea, they have bloating, they have belching. So early symptoms, I would say digestive distress. Tired and wired is a big one because your cortisol pattern gets wonky. And, ideally we wake up with a decent amount of cortisol. It wakes us up for the day. And then it slowly descends throughout the day, allowing for melatonin production at night. And, for a lot of these people that are burning the candle at both ends, they're at the office, they're drinking a lot of coffee, not sleeping well, alcohol, burning, then they get another peak of cortisol in the evening, so they can't actually put themselves back to sleep. Yeah, these are early symptoms, and then you go on, as I spoke about earlier, to affect the thyroid gland, to affect sex hormones. So that's when hormonal issues come in or weight gain comes in. So definitely being as in touch with your body as possible is going to be, preventative care, just to catch these things early and to try to address them.
Yeah. My passion is with yoga and meditation and breath work and all of that kind of raising your awareness type stuff. And so, for me, that's how I feel that those kind of slow, mindful yoga practices really allow you to understand your body in that moment. And the more that you practice that on your mat, the more aware you are of your body off the mat. So,
absolutely.
So before we wrap up, I like to give listeners a takeaway that they're able to action. So let's say that some of what we've been describing resonates with somebody that's listening. Where would you suggest they start? Is there a small change that they might be able to make themselves straight away that would have an impact?
Sure. Let's go back to two of those 5 stresses that I named. So 2 of them were circadian and glycemic stress. So to address circadian stress, I suggest you begin your day with bright light. Even on a cloudy day, get outside for 10 minutes to set the circadian rhythm in your brain so that you're having a harmony around the timing in your body. Yes, the circadian rhythm controls the biological processes that are meant to occur at different times of day and that functions according to light. So bright light in the morning, get outside, get it in your eyes, get it on your skin. You'll have improved energy as a result. And then the second stress is glycemic stress, so blood sugar regulation. So I really suggest that people begin their day with about 25 grams of protein to establish blood sugar regulation and to give your body building blocks for neurotransmitters and hormones.
So, can I just ask you a question about the getting out in bright light? You were saying get it on your eyes and on your skin. So so what do we want to be doing? We want to be... I know that vitamin D, for example, is formed in the skin, so we want not just our faces out in the light. So how does the light work if you want us to be like getting our skin out, you were saying?
Sure. I mean, this is definitely a passion of mine, our light diet. So in the morning, the sun produces UVA. We have light receptors in our retina and all over our entire body. This is really interesting for people to understand that you have light receptors that absorb light all over your entire body. So for better or worse, whether it be blue light at 10 p.m. or the sunlight in the morning, your body's going to absorb it. So expose as much of your skin and your bare eyes to the sun in the morning to get those UVA rays going into your body so that your brain, because your skin absorbs it, which signals your brain to set your circadian rhythm, to set the clock properly. And, there's neurotransmitter effects. You build dopamine in the morning from this UVA exposure. So get out into the light. And even on a cloudy day, there's what's called photons, which is they're light molecules. And so you even absorb light on cloudy days. So just, do yourself a favor, and as much as possible at sunrise and at sunset, get out into natural light. If you're sitting in front of a computer and a blue screen all day, you're constantly feeding your body the biological signal that it is lunchtime, because the sun gives us blue light at lunchtime. But we're not designed to be exposed to blue light all day long. So you can imagine the sort of miswiring that you're giving to your brain in terms of light signals if you're sitting in front of blue light all day long.
That's I'd never heard it called that. It's like telling your body that it's lunchtime all day long.
Yeah. You're communicating light signals. I mean, light signals is fascinating from the sun and also from food. It's really, really interesting.
Okay, so before I let you go, if anybody wanted to follow up with you, where can people find you?
Sure. Well, I'm really active on Instagram, Holistic Health by Sheila. Mm-hmm. I also have my website, which is www.holistichealthbysheila.com.
Perfect. I will put those links in the show notes as well for anybody who's trying to get hold of you. Thank you so much, Sheila. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You are so knowledgeable in everything that you talk about. I always learn something in every conversation we have. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Hannah. It's been a pleasure.
These podcasts are here to help you manage your stress and burnout, and your feedback is really valuable. So please rate this podcast and also drop me a note with any questions, suggestions, or feedback that you might have. One of the most common questions I get asked is, where should I start? And I believe that the best place for you to start is to learn how to soothe your nervous system. I've created a free download with instructions for 5 different ways that you can do just this, and all of them work pretty much instantly. It's called the Essential Toolkit for Management Consultants. You can download it now at www.hannahholden.co.uk/essential. One last thing, it's the legal language. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of your doctor, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional.